longer, but I know that Paul Jordan posted a statistic to that effect of players with X minimum matches, you know, so you don't have the person who went 6-0 in their one Pro Tour seen as the highest finishing limited player of all time. Fennell has the best win percentage. He is a very frequent drafter. Florida is known for producing a lot of high-quality limited Magic players, and Fennell is among the best of the bunch.
And that is not a misnomer. You see, he is playing green-blue devotion. So we're starting off with a bit of a brew today here from the top 8 competitor from Born of the Gods Pro Tour. He's got 3 coursers, 4 Pulachronos, 4 Kiora's Follower, 4 Voyaging Satyr, 2 Sylvan Caryatid, some Arbor Colossi, Nylea, God of the Hunt, 4 Elvish Mystic, then he's got Kiora itself, 3 of the Crashing Wave, 4 Garrett Caller Beast, and 3 copies of Cyclonic Rift. And of course, to tie the entire room together here is Nykthos among those other lands in this deck. As you see, he's going to play a Temple of Mystery, Resolve the Scry, and he dropped down a Voyaging Satyr before that. Yeah, green-based devotion decks were something we saw a lot of early on in Theros Standard. Yes. They sort of got pushed by the wayside as the season progressed, but you see Chris here bringing it back with a blue splash. His opponent, Chris Braud, is playing a Junk Reanimator build. We actually, oddly enough, saw a deck similar to this last week as well during the Swiss rounds. It's not the old, you know, Junk Reanimator. Obviously, it's not involving anything like straight reanimation spells, but it does use Grizzly Salvage to get cards in his graveyard and uses Whip of Erebos to rebuy them, and then has a lot of large value creatures like Angel of Serenity, Shadowborn Demon, Sylvan Primordial, Obsidat. So it can play kind of a natural game, or also use Whip of Erebos to enable graveyard synergies. Now this is interesting because we saw something like this last week. Yeah. When we were in St. Louis. Get off to a pretty nice start here, as Fennell's going to play a Simic, Guildgate, and a Pulachronos World Eater. And then pass the turn back over to Braud, who is, you know, starting his mana acceleration here, and both players are really trying to accelerate into powerful threats. That's the goal, basically, of each deck. So we're going to have what we haven't seen for a little while here, which is a little bit of Haymaker Magic. Yeah, and in Haymaker Magic, it doesn't get that much better than Angel of Serenity. Yeah. That's about as best in class. It's a card that we saw a lot of last year in Standard, as you had Farseek to ramp you and Thragtusk to bridge the gap. It hasn't really found a home yet in this current Standard format. We saw it in one of the blue-white control lists in the sideboard that we had in the top 8 in the Open last week, and we've seen some Junk Reanimator builds, but Angel of Serenity definitely a very powerful card that not a lot of people are playing. Grizzly Salvage going to turn over Obsidat's 8, a Whip of Erebos, a couple of lands there in Goblet Shrine Overgrown Tomb, and then a copy of Elvish Mystic. So Overgrown Tomb is going to go to the grip. The rest of those cards are going to go to the graveyard. And it looks like Chris is just going to keep on ramping up. You do see a Whip of Erebos in his hand. He's going to play that Overgrown Tomb tapped, and he's just going to pass the turn back to Fennell. Keep in mind, Braud does have the 3 necessary white mana to hardcast Angel of Serenity. He's also got 6th mana in play right now as well. So he is doing quite well. Now, of course, Fennell does have access to a Pulachronos activation to take care of that Elvish Mystic if he'd like, but we'll see how he wants to go about taking this turn, because he does have a copy of Garrett Caller Beast in his hand. Yeah, I'm interested to see how Chris performs this weekend, in part because we really haven't seen that many Nykthos decks thus far in Born of the Gods Standard. They've been pushed almost entirely out. You know, we see the random stray, Nykthos and Mono Blue Devotion and that sort of thing, but these lists with Voyaging Satyr and 4 copies of Nykthos are dedicated to explosive Nykthos draws. You see Fennell is going to activate the Monstrosity on Pulachronos, take down the Elvish Mystic, come across here for 6 points of damage. Gonna knock Braud down to 12, and then we got a follow-up play here, probably just a mana accelerant, I would assume. And it is in Kiora's Follower, a card that you talk about all these new cards from Born of the Gods. You've got, you know, Brumaz, you've got Courser, Bile Blight, Drown in Sorrow, some mediocre red cards, pointing a jab at you there with Searing Blood. But Kiora's Follow is a card that we haven't really seen a lot of, but no one can deny how powerful this card is. Yeah, it's hard to find a home for some of these cards. We see a lot of that with gold designs where they're powerful, but it's not necessarily clear where they're supposed to go. Kiora's Follower is another one just like this. It's the power level is not low on this thing. It's, if nothing else, a 2/2 Voyaging Satyr if you can cast it, and it provides a lot of other utility as well, but it's unclear, you know, if we've really found the best home for it just yet. Well, it bit the dust to an abrupt decay on Fennell's end step, and then Braud on his main phase was able to cast a Shadowborn Demon, a card that we haven't seen for a little while, take care of the Pulachronos and pass the turn back, as Kiora herself has joined the party. It's upped, and then an Elvish Mystic joins. Braud going to sacrifice Shadowborn Demon to the upkeep cost. Now his mana is starting to dwindle a little bit here. As he was working his way towards a big spell, it's starting to kind of dwindle down a little bit, but Whip of Erebos will give him something to do in the meantime.
Yeah, but Chris might be able to run away with this game with Kiora here. We aren't actually that far off from Kiora going ultimate. It does not take that many turns, so Whip of Erebos does allow Chris to threaten the Planeswalker potentially, but that's a lot of mana and time. And in the meantime, Chris gets to develop his board even further.
All right, so Fennell has untapped, and he's going to take his turn. Hasn't activated Kiora yet. You see his hand, he's got 2 copies of Garrett Call of the Beast in his hand that he can cast right now. He also has a Cyclonic Rift hanging out that he's a little bit short to cast right now. Looks like he's going to start by... He's not sure. He looks like he may want to up this. Could also use the Explore effect on the Crashing Wave. So we'll see what Fennell does want to do on this particular turn. He also has the other card in his hand is the Nylea, God of the Hunt.
Minusing Kiora here isn't that attractive with no extra lands in his hand here, but he does have to worry about his Kiora just being killed for no additional value through this Whip of Erebos. So he may be incentivized just to minus Kiora here, even though he doesn't have a land in hand, just because Kiora may not be long for this world.
You see, now he is really trying to figure out exactly what he wants to do here. Again, could go up, could go down, and try to hit a land drop. That would allow him to threaten a Cyclonic Rift. And he is going to go down, so let's see what he draws. He draws a copy of Courser of Crufix, which, given his other options, not the best draw right now, because he's got a lot of powerful spells to cast. And he's going to get Nylea into play. You do a devotion check here. You've got 1 for Nylea, 1 each from the Elvis Mystic, so that's 3. 1 for the Satyr is 4, and then 1 for Kiora is 5. So Nylea, God of the Hunt is live, and you see on the upkeep, Fennell is going to actually use Cyclonic Rift to bounce the Whip of Erebos. So a little bit of a time walk there.
Yeah. I mean, with Nylea and realistically the ability to keep Devotion in check for the rest of the game, Fennell is trying to get a little more aggressive here. If Braud spends his turn recasting Whip and Chris gets to attack for 5, use his Planeswalker again, and do something else with all of his mana, Braud might just fall too far behind.
All right, so Braud is going to cast Obsidian Ghost Council. A little brain and drain. Drain and brain, as BBD would say. Braud's going to go up to 14. Fennell's going to go down to 18. You're going to see the trigger from Obsidian. It's going to go hiding, and Fennell's going to untap. But a pretty comfortable 18, and the ability yet again to keep increasing his board here.
Yep. Whip of Erebos and Obsidian is, obviously quite a bit of life gain, but if you haven't seen dedicated Devotion decks operate, once they get enough mana and their powerful stuff, they can overcome a lot of powerful stuff on the other side of the table.
Yeah, they can overcome just about anything. As Fennell does draw a land for the turn. A forest added to the hand, along with still those 2 copies of Garrick hiding out and a Courser of Crufix. So a lot of different things he can do this turn. He can start again by using Kiora. He's got mana to dump into Nylea. He can get the incredibly powerful Garrick on the table, and plus that, it looks like he's going to start by exploring with Kiora. So let's see what he finds. It's a copy of Arbor Colossus. That thing is huge too. That one's actually key because it is going to provide a lot of devotion for Nylea, but also bigger than Obsidian.
And also potentially gives Fennell insurance for an Angel Serenity down the line as well.
Yeah, having an answer on the table. Or in his hand if he wants to slow roll it a little bit here. As you see, Fennell's going to tap a whole bunch of mana, so I want to see what he's going to start with this turn. He is going to go with Garrett. We could even see a minus Garrett and just put Arbor Colossus into play. A lot of options here, boy.
And you can see how critical it is for these Devotion decks to actually find Nykthos, even though Fennell's doing quite well in this game right now. If he finds a Nykthos, then all hell breaks loose potentially.
Yeah.
Is so much mana and so much powerful stuff to do with his mana.
And Fennell is going to minus his Garrick, going to put Arbor Colossus into play. And I think part of the reason he's going to do that is because I don't think he minds if that Garrick bites the dust because he has a backup copy in his hand. So that's okay. This forces Braud into a really difficult situation of, all right, I need to kill that Garrick. I kind of need to kill that Kiora as well right now, but I can't get through all of this garbage that Fennell has on the table. And so Fennell is just going to pass the turn back, does have the necessary devotion for Nylea, but chooses not to attack with it. As Obsidian's going to come back into play. A little drain, a little brain here for Braud. Both players are going to be at 16. But for Braud, one thing you can see here is that, he was ramping really well, but by losing that Elvish Mystic and kind of fumbling around on mana now, he can't do multiple things in a turn.
Oh, the Junk Reanimator deck is incredibly mana intensive. I mean, you look up and down this list, you see a bunch of 6, 7, 8 mana creatures.
See if Obsidat's Aid going to be cast around Shadowborn Demon to take care of the Arbor Colossus. So a card that we haven't seen a lot of in Obsidat's Aid shows up to the party. There's a Temple of Silence, time to Scribe. Braud's going to put that one on the bottom. We'll see if Obsidat wants to come to the red zone. No, it really can't make a good attack here because Nylea is active, because the Necessary Devotion is out there. So Obsidat's just going to go hiding yet again, and Braud's going to pass back to Fennell, who, even though he lost his Arbor Colossus, is still sitting quite well.
Oh, sure. Garrick unchecked and Kiora is just a lot of action. And you can see Fennell got rewarded for his conservative play last turn by not attacking with Nylea, as Nylea on defense was still able to protect both of Fennell's very valuable planeswalkers.
He's going to turn over a couple cards here. Kiora's Follower and Nylea, God of the Hunter, going to go back to the hand. Of those cards that are going to the bottom, Cyclonic Rift, certainly the most important.
Yeah, Fennell is approaching the mana point where, well, actually, he has it already. He is actually up to 7 right now with the Voyaging Satyr, where an overloaded Cyclonic Rift could be an enormous tempo swing.
Yep. Fennell going to up. Kiora says, Shadowborn Demon, you're not going to do any damage next turn, thank you. Or is he? He wants to confirm. I think he might be asking a judge a question here. It's funny, I think his Kiora might be in a different language, so he's not sure exactly what the card is going to do. Didn't play that one in his Storm deck last weekend.
Yeah, it does appear that both his Garrick and his Kiora are Japanese, so.
He's fancy. He is fancy. As he's going to come across here with the 6/6. Of course, no real good blocks here for Braud. So Braud's going to go down to 10. Yep, and now he's going to up Kiora, take care of the Shadowborn Demon. Let's see what the follow-up play here for Chris is going to be. Just Arbor Colossus looks like yet again. Elvish Mystic and Voyaging Satyr are going to tap for Kiora's Follower and pass the turn back. So again, still plenty of mana here out there for Fennell. He's got some big threats, a couple Planeswalkers as well, as Braud's going to bring Obsidat back into play. He goes up to 12. Fennell goes down to 14. Shadowborn Demon, that's going to bite the dust, and Braud will take a draw. Overgrown Tomb is added to the hand. That will give him the necessary 7 mana to cast Angel Serenity if he has one in his hand.
And this seems like a pretty good board for Angel Serenity.
Well, if that Overgrown Tomb is coming to play untapped, I think he has Angel Serenity. And he does. So there is the 5/6 flyer. 3 targets, please. You see it's going to target Arbor Colossus, Nylea, God of the Hunt, and Braud's going to check his graveyard to see if there's anything down there worth it. And I think Shadowborn Demon is certainly good enough. And so now all of a sudden, this game has changed in a big way.
Although Braud did have the option there of just trying to take out the last untapped creature that Fennell had to threaten a Planeswalker here. I guess this attack forces a chump block anyway, so this is not the worst. But both of those Planeswalkers are so threatening that were I in Braud's seat, I may want to have ensured that I got one of those off the table.
Yeah, I mean, it makes for an interesting question on which one you're supposed to get off the table. I think it's Garrick.
Probably Garrick.
I think that's the scarier of the two. Of course, Kiora is certainly doing some quality work right now, so it's going to be able to shut down Angel Serenity, basically, for the rest of the game. But, you know, there's definitely arguments to be made.
And this feels like one of the old school, by old school I mean last standard season, boards where Angel of Serenity really dominates. Both players just kind of fumbling around trying to generate mana advantages or card advantages with creatures, and Angel of Serenity comes over the top and ends all of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we saw during Junk Reanimator and players trying to play kind of mid-rangey style decks. Is Angel of Serenity, once it came onto the table, it just did reign supreme. As Garrick's going to go up, reveal a forest, an island, a Nykthos, an Arbor Colossus, and a forest. Arbor Colossus, pretty darn important there, as it can actually take care of that Angel of Serenity, but it's kind of a slow way to take care of it.
Yeah. Again, if Fennell had one of his copies of Nykthos, this is a very different game.
Yes.
As mana is no longer a question.
Well, keep in mind, Fennell has not used that Kiora just yet. Looks like he's moving that way in just a moment. But as you did mention, you know, even though Fennell's been operating perfectly fine, you know, his deck doesn't want to play fair. It wants to go from 0 to 60 really fast, which is what Nykthos allows the deck to do. As there is the Arbor Colossus, follow up with a Voyaging Satyr, and pass the turn back. Obsidat's going to come back in. Braud's going to go up to 12. Fennell's going to go down to 12. And Braud will take a draw.
And this Obsidat compels Fennell to be acting a little bit faster than this. There is a defined clock on this game right now.
Yeah.
So as good as this is for him to be drawing cards and defending his Planeswalkers, he needs to start doing something proactive pretty fast, or otherwise this Obsidat's just going to win the game by itself.
We got a bunch of mana being tapped. What's this one going to be? A Sylvan Primordial is going to show up. All right.
recent commander ban.
Yeah, yeah, that card's got to go, and it's going to take care of Garrick. And of course, Braud will get to search out a land. But
And
I think more important, there's the Planeswalker is gone.
don't snicker at the mana. I mean, this deck with all the 7 and 8 mana creatures and Whip of Obsidian and all that can definitely use a lot of mana.
Yeah, that's true. So the Primordial is going to come in.
Erebos, rather, sorry.
Let's see what Braud wants to do. Any attacks to be had here? Nope, I'm just going to pass the turn back. So Fennell is going to get to move and try to catch back up here, but he's having some real trouble right now because the Haymakers are just firing here from Braud. And Fennell knows that Braud does have the whip in his hand because he rifted it a few turns back. So he's really got to overcome some things. Now, of course, he can go Monstrosity on the Arbor Colossus to take care of the Angel of Serenity. That's something that he can do as he draws Temple of Mystery for the turn. So see what he wants to do on his end this turn. Funny that he's got so much mana, but only 4 lands in play.
Yep. And also needs substantially more mana than he actually has.
Yeah, yeah. Both these players, very, very mana-hungry decks. This is one of those times where, in the old days, last Standard season, both players would go reaching for Acidic Slime.
Yeah.
And try to clean them up that way. But that card is no longer with us in this Standard format. As Fennell, considering his options here, has not used Kiora yet this turn, does have that backup Garrick he's had for a while. Braud does know about the Nylea God of the Hunt that Fennell has in his hand as well. And the fact that that can provide trample might actually play a pretty important role in this game here.
I think this all starts with Fennell finding Nykthos, honestly. I think that makes all these questions very easy to answer. Until then, I think he's just a little bit behind in terms of power.
So let's see how much mana he has access to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana that he has access to right now. The Temple of Mystery, of course, going to come into play tap, so not really going to be able to do anything with that. Again, we might see a Monstrosity activation on Arbor Colossus. You see, he's really considering his options here. Wants to see what's in Braud's graveyard as well because of that whip in Braud's hand. So he's really got to find a path here as he's going to up Kiora. Yeah, he wants to target the Primordial. Okay, so that to me signifies that he wants to shoot down the Angel of Serenity at some point.
Right. And it may just be this turn.
Yeah, no, the question is, do you do it on your main phase versus do you do it on Braud's turn? Because if he does it on his main phase, I mean, he'll get the creatures back, but he won't actually be able to cast them right away, so it's a little bit weird. But at the same time, you know, you're able to make your Colossus big and attacking, so, you know, there's a lot of decisions to be made right now.
Yeah. Definitely not the simplest board. Giving your opponent back the Shadowborn even to cast on their own main phase is a risk too.
That's,
you know, there's
a
lot of variables right now that Fennell is trying to work through.
Now you see he is going to take a look at the graveyard here. Nothing really happening down there.
Yeah.
And we haven't even mentioned, you know, we talked about the Temple of Mystery, but, you know, the scrying decision is certainly a big one too. He's going to take a look at the top card here. And he cut that one pretty quickly, so that's interesting. Makes you wonder if maybe a Nykthos is hiding out over there.
It was a very, very fast.
That was a fast keep. Like, as far as fast keeps go, and like, what card could he be trying to keep right now? Is he's going to pass the turn back? I mean, he has 4 Arbor Colossuses in his deck, but he has one in play already. He's got Kiora in play. He's got a Garrick in his hand. Cyclonic Rift. He put one on the bottom. Has already cast one. So there's one more kind of that he has access to. I mean, not saying that he can't get to the one on the bottom of his deck,
right.
But, you know, all things being honest, you know, he's got one more that he's drawing live to, and he's already put 1 Nykthos on the bottom. He's got 2 more to draw to, as Braud's going to cast a Grizzly Salvage. There's a Forest, there's a Swamp, there's a Forest, there's a Sylvan Primordial, and there is an Elvish Mystic. I think he wants the big guy.
Probably.
I think he wants the big guy. There it is. So a second Primordial is going to show up to the party.
There's a small argument for just putting the Primordial in the graveyard because you have Whip in hand, but we're at the stage of the game where Braud can just cast all the 7 and 8 mana creatures he draws.
All the boom booms are going to come into play. He's got 4 mana, so this is going to be the Whip that we saw much earlier in the game finally get redeployed.
And this is actually a pretty critical turn for Fennell here, as Braud's turn here is all set up. It's just, he has something for next turn. He has a little more mana. The Whip is in play. There's still not really that much in the way of good attacks. So this is the turn on whatever Fennell does at the end of Braud's turn here and untapping. This is where Fennell can catch back up because Braud's turn here was not very good.
There's the Monstrosity and Armor Colossus, which we all saw coming. Obazat's going to go hiding. You see the life totals, 10 to 14 between Fennell and Braud. I want to know what that top card is. I want to know what Fennell kept there, because this is going to play, obviously, a huge role in this game. He draws a card. Oh, don't slow roll me, Chris. I got to know. It's a forest.
He must have a very precise turn lined up.
Yes,
then.
he must.
If he kept basic forest on top, that means he knows exactly what he wants to be doing this turn.
That is the last thing I expect to see coming off the top of his deck.
Well, it's not. He's at no shortage of need for spells. He has a bunch of spells in hand, including Garrick, which is more spells in essence. So mana is the bottleneck right now.
That force is going to allow him to have 10 mana. Now we know he has Nylea in his hand, and then activating Nylea costs 4 mana as well. So that would give him 2 left over. I'm not sure if that's the route he wants to take. Attacking here is a little bit dubious because Whip is going to kind of offset a lot of the damage that is dealt. So what is he up to? It was a fast keep on the forest, as you mentioned.
Yeah, it implies to me that he knows precisely what he wanted to do with his mana going into the turn.
Going to take a look at the graveyard again. Of course, Angel of Serenity now down there for Whip of Erebos. A little bit of an interesting exchange with Angel of Serenity down there with Whip, where you get the kind of one-shot kill there, remove their guys, but then they get their guys back. So it doesn't play like a huge role. It's kind of just like a lava axe at that point that does also gain 5 life. I know. Is there a 5-point like drain effect? I'm thinking of Soul Feast, which is 4.
I'm sure this design exists somewhere.
It's got to be there somewhere. Armor Class is going to come in. Looks like Primordial got in the way. There's a Garrick. They need 1 more mana for that, so he's going to use the Elvish Mystic. So now Garrick is back. We saw one a little bit earlier in the game. He did some nice work. It's going to go, looks like it's going up. So here we go. Nykthos again. Forest, Breeding Pool, and Voyaging Satyr. Satyr is going to go to the grip, everything else is going to go to the bottom. Chris, you're supposed to keep the Nykthos on top.
Right, yeah.
You did it wrong.
Yeah, you put the forest on the bottom, and then you draw the Nykthos.
And then it's lights out. Yeah. Who wants a forest when you can have Nykthos generate all that green mana?
You're telling me this guy just top 8 Pro Tour? I'm not buying it.
Let's see, he looks like he's going to have 3 mana here. Here's 2, here's 3. What's the follow-up going to be? There's Courser. So let's take a look at the top card. Another Garrick. Something Chris doesn't really need. He's going to pass the turn back, it looks like.
Perhaps the worst draw in the deck at this point.
Yeah, arguably. Zozat's going to come in. Braud going to go up to 16. Fennell down to 8. And as you mentioned, it's a slow clock. And it was that, but it's a clock.
Yeah.
It does put a finite number of turns on the game.
Especially now with Braud being able to threaten, for example, he has flyers in his graveyard to get back with Whip that are not very easy for Fennell to block.
I think we're going to see that right now, actually. Yeah, there's an activation of the Whip. Angel coming back. Yes, it is.
I believe we're just setting up lethal right now.
He's going to try. I mean, we see a big attack coming here for 5 in the air. As you mentioned, no blockers. Cure doesn't interact favorably with Whip, because you obviously can't whip. You can't cure the thing that comes back. I think Fennell's just going to pack it up. Yeah, he knows he's beat. So Chris Braud, with the use of Whip of Erebos, is going to win game number 1 here over Chris Fennell. Junk Reanimator up a game over Green Blue Devotion. I'm going to take a look at the sideboard here, because we've got some, I mean, his main deck is already interesting enough. We've got some interesting sideboard cards, too. 4 Mistcutter Hydra, 4 Nylea's Disciple, a singleton of Primeval Bounty, Plummet, and Sylvan Primordial. And then this is not a misnomer. That is 4 copies of Bramble Crush.
Wow. Went pretty deep here.
That's a lot of those.
Yes, that's 4 more than you usually see.
So I think Bramble Crush is actually going to come in here, because this is kind of a, as we mentioned, very mana-intensive matchup.
Oh, for sure.
And the ability to kill Whip as well is certainly a big deal. So we're going to see a lot of those come in. I also like the idea behind Primeval Bounty. And I like Sylvan Primordial number 4 as well. So
games are going to go long. You just want the big stuff.
Yeah, that is his first Sylvan Primordial. Chris has the other ones in his deck. So
on the other side, Braud has 2 Mistcutter Hydras, 3 Luxon Smiters, a Duress, a Sin Collector, 2 Thoughtseize, 2 Lifebane Zombies, a Revoke Existence, an Ashen Rider, and 2 Golgari Charms. I really like 2 Lifebane Zombies in this matchup. Naturally, very powerful here. I like the additional Ashen Rider, as Fennell has a lot of Planeswalkers trying to defend, and it's, again, the anticipation is these games are going to go fairly long. And I also like Thoughtseize as well against Nykthos decks in general, as most of their draws are basically setup and then payoff. And Thoughtseize can be very good at taking up either the critical setup card or the critical payout card.
Sure. You see both players are sideboarding in here, so we'll see how they do want to go. But as we do start round number 1 of 10 here in Atlanta, we want to thank you guys for joining us early this morning. Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan. Star City Games Open Series has made it here to Atlanta, Georgia. We've got 10 rounds for you today. Who knows how many tomorrow? But we're going to do 10 rounds today, and then we're also going to do our quarterfinals, give away those 3 months of premium today. Tomorrow morning, we'll start bright and early at 8 a.m. East Coast time. Well, we will work our way through the semis, give away 6 months then. Finals, give away 12 months of premium. And then we'll work our way towards crowning a legacy champion. If you guys joined us last weekend, of course, we do appreciate you. St. Louis was a blast. Jonathan Habel winning the standard tournament there. But one of the more impressive things that happened last weekend, outside of Van Meter making top 8 and Ketter running off another beautiful performance, Greg Smith, legacy champion.
Yeah.
2-0, 2-0, 2-0, 6-0 the elimination rounds. Not sure he was dealt 10 points of damage over the course of the elimination rounds.
It was the most lopsided elimination rounds I've ever covered.
I think I would agree with you. I think I would agree with you. As far as games go, every time we saw him, he destroyed everyone.
Yep.
So if you're a fan of Imperial Painter, you got to watch that dismantle everyone. We'll see if it's going to happen again. Well, what we've seen here on the Open Series is Imperial Painter normally comes in 2s. We saw Suarez win with it in Baltimore last summer. Ruben Bressler, who is here playing Magic, he got second place in Cincinnati the week after. So maybe more Painter servants we cast tomorrow.
A good response to $2,000 mana bases is $5 Blood Moons.
I love it.
That's a time-honored tradition in Magic's history.
Magus of the Moon's probably less than that. So.
Yeah. Interesting enough about Fennell's list here is no copies of Burning Tree Emissary, a card that most people consider to be a staple of green devotion decks.
Yeah.
Not here.
I'm a little bit surprised as well not to see that card in here, as it does provide a lot of help for Nykthos. Obviously, it's a little bit weird to see in a green-blue deck because you think of it as a green-red card or a mono-green card, but that's basically what this deck is. Let's not kid ourselves. So I'm with you. I'm a little bit surprised to see that card in here. A little bit different take. Yeah, well, you do have Kyor's follower, so.
Burning Tree Emissary basically facilitates your best draws. Your best draws become unbeatable, basically, with a certain number of Burning Tree Emissaries. It also magnifies your bad draws. When you don't have Nykthos or you don't have a thing you're trying to play towards, Burning Tree Emissary is just a 2-mana 2-2. So
pretty much.
It definitely polarizes your draws, and Fennell going with a much more stable route.
So both players take a look at their opening hands here. Fennell on the left, he will be on the play. He's going to start with Temple of Mystery. Both players have kept their 7 as Braud's going to take a draw. Angel Serenity shows up. He's going to go down to 18 via Overgrown Tomb. And an Elvish Mystic. As Fennell will take a draw. There's a Breeding Pool. This has got to be an accelerant of some sort, and it is with Voyaging Satyr. And again, this is going to look very much like standard of last year, kind of like a Junk Reanimator Mirror almost, of just accelerate, 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 big spell.
And then who has the best stuff going on?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Last game it was Braud. We'll see if it'll be Fennell this game, as he just drawn Arbor Colossus for the turn. He's going to play Breeding Pool untapped to go down to 18 himself. And now this is Pulchranos, which can actually, again, contain the mana acceleration of Braud to a certain extent.
Yeah, you see Braud just picked up another Elvish Mystic, which is not the ideal draw here.
Might want to leave that one in the grip.
Yeah.
As there you do see the World Eater doing a nice job in Standard so far, as Braud's going to play that Elvish Mystic. Might want to main phase the Grizzly Salvage in his hand just so he can get another land into play, but he's just going to pass the turn back. So Fennell, if he does have another land, can really go hunting here. He's got a Temple of Mystery. Does he have an untapped land?
A very gutsy play by Braud there.
Looks like it's going to end up working out for him here. Fennell is, I'm sure he's thinking, I just needed one more.
I mean, if Braud's alternative turn there was just casting a Grizzly Salvage and saying go, that turn is also unlikely to beat this Pulchranos. So I think this is a good gamble by Braud. If Fennell doesn't have a 5th mana, you keep your head above water, and you would have been in trouble anyway. If you just did nothing instead.
The big guy's coming through. Braud's going to block. Chris has got to be thrilled with that. I'm a little surprised by a block there.
Yeah, at this point, Fennell's just got to be thrilled to pin down mana. So,
because that is what this matchup is all about. And I think Fennell may understand that, where Braud might learn that in this game. But okay, yeah. So there's a Bramble Crush. We're gonna see a Grizzly Salvage here momentarily, and there is your instant. It's gonna turn over a Primordial, Temple of Plenty, Overgrown Tomb, Obsidian's 8, and an Elvish Mystic. So Overgrown Tomb is going to come back to the grip. Bramble Crush will take care of the Overgrown Tomb that's in play. And Fennell is going to pass the turn back here after playing the Temple of Mystery and Scrying. And yeah, in this particular matchup, as you mentioned, it's all about ramping and having the biggest threat. But if you can contain the person across from you from ramping, which Bramble Crush will allow Fennell to do, you're in a great spot.
Yeah, Braud has so many bad draws in his deck at this point,
yes.
too. All the setup cards, he doesn't have enough mana to facilitate things like Whip of Erebos right now, as you see one just drawn this turn. Of course, he's so far away from casting his 6 and 7 and 8 mana spells, so.
Now, one card that Braud can work towards is Obsidat's Aid.
Yes.
As there is a good card in the graveyard now, in Sylvan Primordial, which will actually give him a land, too, to keep accelerating. So, in a way, Obsidat's Aid is certainly something to work towards, but again, we know that he's going to get stone rained, for lack of a better term here, because I believe we're going to watch Fennell take care of that Elvish Mystic now, as he's kind of shown that he knows that this is really about mana.
Yeah, nothing too bad can happen to Fennell as long as Braud doesn't get to 5+ mana. Fennell's keenly aware of this, so I think you're going to see Fennell be as aggressive as he possibly can about just containing mana.
He's going to activate Monstrosity for 2. He says, get that Elvish Mystic out of here. Sure, you can float some mana, I don't mind. Here's another Grizzly Salvage. So let's see what this is going to reveal. There's an Elvish Mystic, an Overgrown Tomb, a Swamp, a Temple of Plenty, and a Lifebane Zombie. Lifebane Zombie much too late at this point to really have a huge impact on this game, as Fennell is going to attack for 7. Braud's going to go down to 11, and that'll just be Fennell's turn, passing the turn back. Braud will take a draw. Looks like he drew a Lotleth Troll, which, oddly enough, does a nice job of blocking, but that means that Fennell will have the opportunity to just keep deploying large threats now.
Yeah, Lotleth Troll, there's nothing wrong with here, and certainly a regenerating blocker is nice, but it's not a long-term answer, and you can assume, as you see Fennell reveal his hand here, that as he hasn't really made a lot of land drops and hasn't been casting very much, that his hand's full of pretty high-impact spells, and you see that here with a Palo Chronos, an Arbor Colossus, a Nylea, and a Garruk.
Yeah, 4 hits.
Yeah.
As there goes the Nylea. I think that's the correct hit there, simply because providing trample right now at a 7/7 is a big deal.
Yes.
So to be able to stop that is certainly a step in the right direction here for Braud, as Fennell does pick up an Elvish Mystic this turn. Fennell looks like he's gonna rumble on in for 7 yet again. Braud going to immediately block. We'll see if Fennell wants to use all of his mana this turn for the Arbor Colossus, and he does.
Yeah, Braud has yet to show really an ability to defend himself against creatures other than with his own big stuff. He hasn't really shown any sort of Doomblade ultimate price type effects in his list. It's pretty easy to assume they're not really there because his deck requires a lot of setup, and so Fennell is pretty confident that he can just deploy these 5 and 6 mana creatures with no consequences.
Braud does play that Lotleth Troll that we mentioned. Pass the turn back as Fennell draws his copy of Sylvan Primordial, just a 1-of in his sideboard. Braud has his in his main deck, as Fennell's going to come across here with his 2 big dumb idiots in Arbor Colossus and Pulachronos.
So yeah, round 1 of the Standard Open here, and we have a Sylvan Primordial mirror match.
Yeah.
Would not have guessed.
Yeah, just another day at the office.
Yeah.
Fennell going to play an Elvish Mystic, and just pass the turn back. Fennell in the enviable situation right now where lands and spells are good.
Anything's good.
Yeah. See, Braud has drawn his card for the turn. Looks like he's bottlenecked, and he is going to pack it in. So Fennell is going to even things up here between the Chris Amir match. We're going to go to game 3 to start things off here in Atlanta.
And I'm very excited about Fennell's list here. I brought up a couple of times in 2014 that the least played dual land in Standard has been Breeding Pool, in part because the blue-green keyword doesn't really play well in a format where Supreme Verdict is a card that you're trying to beat. And so blue-green has been marginalized as a result, but there's a lot of power in Born of the Gods for blue-green cards.
Yeah, and I hope that we'll see more coming in Journey to Nyx. We'll see what happens, as blue-green is my favorite color combination.
Yeah. Kiora, and it's a lot of players' favorite color combination too, because doing fancy things with creatures, which is sort of what blue-green's all about, is for a lot of players, that's as fun as it gets. So Kiora's Follower and Kiora the Planeswalker are both huge upgrades for that guild, of course.
Yeah, I want more blue-green in my life. So I'm happy to see what Fennell is doing here, as both players not going back to the boards. They're happy with their configurations, and we'll see them do battle in a moment. But as far as things to be excited about, I know you're off next weekend. I think you're staying in the California area.
I am.
But Grand Prix Richmond is right around the corner, my friend.
it's going to be a big one. If you haven't been keeping up with the pre-registration numbers, this Grand Prix is going to blow some doors off record-wise.
We're over 1,900 pre-registrants already.
For a constructed Grand Prix, that's insanity.
Grand Prix. The record is Grand Prix Madrid, 2,227 players in 2010. That's going to get cracked.
Sorry,
yeah.
Bad news.
That is going to get cracked because, as you know, just like I do, Magic players are lazy, so they're going to file in the registration on, normally Thursday or Friday. So this number of players is going to be complete insanity. If you are in the area or even considering going, we want to see you there because it's going to be a very, very fun weekend. But right now, we'll turn our attention back to this match. Braud versus Fennell. Braud will be on the play. He's going to play a Temple of Plenty to begin. He's going to put that top card to the bottom. Fennell does have a Mana Accelerant, we think. There it is.
Whoop.
In Elvish Mystic. He's also got a Voyaging Satyr in the grip that he wanted to play that turn. You see Braud is going to play Temple Garden. Does he have Mana Accelerant? He does not. And you can see right now, we're going to see, I feel, a big difference in games here because one of these players is accelerating like crazy, the other one's not. As Elvish Mystic is able to come in, there's a Kiora's follower, and Fennell can pass the turn back.
Yeah, not only is he behind the 8-ball in terms of mana here, although he just picked up a Sylvan Caryatid, Fennell now, if he has any of his Bramble Crushes, is going to set Braud really far behind.
Yeah. Fennell draws an Arbor Colossus this turn. We might see him just jam that, yeah. So now he's got a clock on the table. That is worth noting. Braud is going to take a draw here. He draws a forest, so he's got lands as well. He's got a Whip of Erebos. Looks like he has an Elspeth in his hand, too. Elspeth, great against this deck.
Yeah, 2 copies of Elspeth in Braud's main deck.
There's the Whip. So this is kind of the setup turn.
Yes.
And he's also kind of laying a trap this turn, too. Because if Fennell plays another big dummy, Elspeth gets to go on cleanup duty. So let's see what Fennell wants to do. You see his hand right now. He's got a Temple of Plenty. He's got a Temple of Mystery, excuse me. And he has a Breeding Pool and some other big dummies. Breeding Pool's going to come into play untapped. Fennell's going to go down to 18. He says, let's get in the red zone with Kiora's follow and Arbor Colossus. And here's another Arbor Colossus. Elspeth! Is Elspeth home? Temple of Plain, does he have an untapped land? He does Braud. We'll see if he wants to pull the trigger on this play. I think you got to.
Elspeth is pretty attractive on this board, to say at the very least.
He says, I'm going to minus that. Fennell says those are greater than 4. Okay, they're dead. And Braud will pass the turn back. Now, he will lose his Elspeth in this exchange, but I still think that's worth it.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so Fennell draws a Breeding Pool for the turn. Kiora's follower, I think that's going to go upstairs, and then the Mystic will take care of Elspeth. So Braud's going to go down 2 more points of life. Let's see what Fennell has to follow up with, because he's already played 2 of his larger cards.
And you can see if Braud did not find the Sylvan Primordial, the Sylvan Caryatid rather, the turn that he did, he might have just died before we even got to Elspeth.
Yeah. I think we would have lost very, very quickly. Fennell considering his options now. You see his hand, he's got a couple of lands. Is that Cyclonic Rift over there? He's got Voyaging Satyr. I got a ton going on over here for Fennell.
Yeah, he's kind of up against it at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Like, he's run out of his early momentum, and now he just has low impact cards in play, and who knows the extent of Braud's hand, but it's safe to assume there's some really powerful cards hanging out there.
Well, there's an Angel of Serenity over there, but he can't cast it yet this turn because his next land's going to come into play tapped. It's a Temple of Plenty. So Braud is going to play a Courser of Crufix. Take a look at the top card of the deck. There's an Overgrown Tomb. And he is going to put that into play tapped. He's going to gain a life. He's going to go up to 10. We'll see the next card, which is a Temple of Plenty. Let's see what else Braud has to do this turn. He's just going to pass the turn back here. So maybe hoping for Fennell not to have a Planeswalker or something of that sort. As Chris will take a draw.
And even Courser is really bad for Fennell here, as the 2/4 is just bigger than anything that Chris hasn't played.
Kiora's follower is the card revealed here for Fennell. After he plays a Courser of his own, very unexciting card to reveal here. Going to play a Breeding Pool tapped. Just pass the turn back to Braud. So Braud is going to untap that land. He'll draw that Temple of Plenty. There's an Overgrown Tomb off the top of his deck. But he's at that sweet spot. He's got 7 mana. And Fennell is hoping desperately that there's not an Angel of Serenity in his hand.
Magic players.
But I'm afraid I've got some bad news, Patrick.
Like we said, these are the boards. These are kind of the boards you used to see in Standard, where Angel of Serenity was one of the best things to be doing.
Overgrown Tomb going to come into play untapped, so Braud's only going to take 1 as opposed to 2. And I think part of the reason we're going to see this so you can see what his next card is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, 6.
Chris Ride, please report to the main event
7.
scorekeeper. Chris Ride, main event
Angel.
scorekeeper, please.
Let's see what those targets are going to be. 1, 2, 3. Going to leave Fennell with an Elvish Mystic. Fennell shrugs his shoulders and says, yep, these belong to you now.
Now keep in mind, Braud is pretty low here, and Fennell does have Cyclonic Rift in hand.
Yep.
So if Braud gets sloppy, Fennell can try to set this up, but that whip and all that life gain is going to make it very challenging.
Yeah, the whip is the thing that's going to make this game really, really difficult here for Fennell. And he also knows the card that's coming off the top of his deck, which is Kiyora's Follower, which is going to have a huge role. You do mention the fact that he does have Cyclonic Rift in his hand, and that's going to be good. And certainly a step in the right direction. But he needs to get a board, then Rift, then attack. You know, he needs to have a nice board.
And he needs to be doing this all the while. Braud's going to be gaining life off the whip in theory, and there's just a lot of different things that Fennell needs to try to fight at this point.
So Fennell does have just those two cards, Cyclonic Rift and Kiyora's Follower. Braud knows about one of them, doesn't know about the Overload Instant, however.
This is a spot where Fennell could really use Bramble Crush.
You know, I didn't think I was going to say that today.
Yeah, I would have lost that bet this weekend, but this would be a good spot.
Yeah, not bad at all. He's going to pass the turn back. So Fennell is going to have access to an Overload Cyclonic Rift this turn. Braud's going to draw Goblet Shrine, reveals an Overgrown Tomb. See if he wants to play the Tomb off the top, or if he wants to maybe play Temple of Plenty. We'll see what happens here.
I think you just want to play the Tomb because scrying is the same as just putting the Overgrown Tomb into play.
Yeah.
So you might as well get your freebie.
Braud says, you know what? Let's start by attacking. Fennell says, well, how about you pick all that stuff up? The whip 2. The whip's got to go 2. So we'll make sure, we'll radio down there. Yeah. And Fennell sees it. He says, that whip 2. I can't beat it, so please pick it up. So now Braud needs to reset everything here. So he's going to start by playing Courser. There's the Overgrown Tomb yet again. Has not played a land yet this turn still. Going to play that. That's going to come into play tap. Braud's going to move up to 12. We'll see the top card of his deck in just a moment here, as he's going to play a spell first. He's going to deploy the whip.
Make sure the top card of his deck gets revealed here.
Yep. And that is an Elvish Shrine. Elvish Mystic off the top here for Fennell, so he gets to rebuild everything. As there's a Courser. He reveals a Voyaging Satyr. And this is a little bit of the problem with, you know, a Devotion type deck, because there's a lot of setup and a lot of mana accelerants, and then you've only got a couple of payoffs.
Right, and you saw, you know, this game, Fennell's payoffs were 2 copies of Arbor Colossus, which just got swept away by Elspeth.
Yeah.
Left him with just 1/1s and 1/2s and 2/2s, just not a lot of power.
Yeah, nothing too crazy happening at all there. So now, you know, the other issue too is that because your deck is littered with all those mana accelerants, that's going to be a lot of your draw steps moving into the mid and late game, where you're hoping to draw a high impact card like, you know, a Garruk or a Kiora, a Sylvan Primordial, something of that nature, but your likelihood of you drawing mana accelerants is very high. As you see, Braud, does reveal a Temple Garden now to his Courser. So he's drawn a lot of lands here. He hasn't had a lot of action as we've moved into the late game, but Angel Serenity has been more than good enough, as Braud's going to end up taking 1 here. Going to take 2 from the Shockland and then 1 from the Courser. Now there's another action card finally in Shadowborn Demon, and that might be what does wrap it up here. As Angel Serenity is obviously good, but Shadowborn Demon is that secondary threat.
Yeah. Fennell may be able to cobble something together to beat 1 card like this, but it's really hard to beat 2.
You see Courser going to come across here for 2. Going to gain Braud 2 life, push him up to 13, as Fennell is going to lose his 2 creatures. He'll take a draw, Voyaging Satyr, which we all knew what he was going to draw. He'll play 2 copies of Kiyora's Follower and that Voyaging Satyr and pass the turn back to Braud, who will draw that Shadowborn Demon, reveal an Elvish Mystic. And you saw Courser get the job done there as far as, you know, getting through that glut of lands so that he could actually find some business in the form of Shadowborn Demon.
Getting some life, pretty valuable here as well.
Yep. He was starting to get a little bit low. Fennell's deck doesn't have any reach, no Blaze, Fireball, any of that stuff, as there's a Shadowborn Demon, but keeping your head above water is certainly a good idea, as the Demon will take care of Kiyora's Follower.
And Braud also can't be totally confident in the contents of Fennell's deck as well.
Yeah.
You don't know what's there.
Yeah. You have a general idea.
Yeah.
But you can definitely get some spice into this deck here, as Temple of Plenty is going to come into play. Braud going to gain a little bit of life. He's obviously going to put Elvish Mystic down to the bottom. Take a look at the top card. You get an Elvish Mystic anyway, Chris.
Better to draw 1 of them than 2 of them.
That is accurate. He's going to play Sylvan Carrington, pass the turn back here to Fennell, who will take a draw. Oh, well.
Right on time.
Somebody finally found their Ichthos.
Right on time.
and Fennell will extend the hand. Chris Braud has just defeated a Pro Tour top 8 competitor. Chris Fennell does not start off with a win this weekend. So congratulations to Chris Braud and his Junk Reanimator deck, taking down Chris Fennell, playing Green Blue Devotion 2 games to 1, and Braud is off to a very nice start in this 10-round tournament here in Atlanta.